Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Binz, let's continue the questioning with you. I'm trying to reconcile some things that were brought up in our meeting last week, statements that you made that just don't seem to line up with information that I learned that same day. When we met, you assured me that the only team, and this was your words, the only team that you had in place to help with the nomination was comprised of FERC employees from their External Affairs Office. You gave me the impression that this public relations firm, Binz, had contacted you somewhat out of the blue to offer help, to dispense some letters to the industry that you had put together. Nothing wrong with that. You did, though, acknowledge that the PR firm was being paid for by Green Tech Action Fund, which is in turn funded by the Energy Foundation, which is your former client. You also admitted that you thought perhaps the Energy Foundation or an affiliate had hired a former Senate staffer who's now a lobbyist to help you with your nomination efforts. You weren't sure whether or not another lobbyist you mentioned was a volunteer or being paid for services, again, by your former client. So then, I learned, again, that same day in emails that were released by FERC that this effort was apparently much more involved than you had indicated. We've got an email that came from the FERC dated July 8. FERC External Affairs, the White House nomination liaison, as well as lobbyists or consultants from Cassidy & Associates, Binz, AJW Inc., PK Strategies, the Energy Foundation, and the Hewlett Foundation were involved or certainly invited to participate in a meeting on your nomination. Then the following day, there's an email in which you ask the team, and again, that's your word, and that includes everyone on the earlier email except the White House. So you asked them to review materials that were going to be sent to this committee as part of your formal nominations packet. You then sought edits from this team to what you called the Binz bio document, and that was to be, and I presume actually was, submitted to the committee by the FERC personnel as an attachment. So what I'm trying to reconcile is you've effectively got a team, a shadow team of lobbyists and PR experts that have been helping throughout, which, again, as I suggested, I hate to think that this is going to be the new normal. But what I can't reconcile is your statement to me that said the only ones that you were working with, were the FERC external team. I'm not following how one lines up with the emails that, again, were part of this FOIA request.
Sure, Senator, I'd be glad to respond to that. I apologize if I left a different impression that what we now agree has happened. In fact, I had disclosed to your chief counsel the email prior to this that showed the presence of all those people in that meeting. I've gone back and I had been asked in my interview with your staff if I was aware of any coordination between Binz and the White House. And I told them that I was not aware of that, and then I recalled that there had been this one meeting. And I think I copied Mr. McCormick on an email about that. I went back after our meeting with you to list every contact I've had with these folks. I think there's a grand total of 3, including the initial contact by Mr. Meehan that day and his staff's offer to send out my press materials. I had this conference call that you're just referencing, and this is the one that I told Mr. McCormick about after my meeting with him last week. And then there was one more, and as far as I know, I've had no contact with these folks since July the 15th. This is the Binz people. In fact, I asked them to stop sending me material. I did not want to coordinate with them. I have spoken to Mr. Miller, Chris Miller, a few times subsequently, and I've relied on him for he's an old hand at these things. He'd worked on committee staff, and I ask him for advice occasionally, but that's really it. I have hired no one. I'm paying no one. I have and am a solo practitioner. I don't even have administrative support in my business. And when the nomination came up I was glad to accept some assistance in dealing with the press because that was, so again, I very much apologize, and I would be glad to get together and talk further with your staff about this. I'm trying to be as open as a book on these things. I also agree with you that this is an unfortunate situation if this is the new normal. As you can imagine, when I was nominated for this position back in, or when I was told by the White House I had this position, I predicted there was going to be a fight over this nomination because of my experience with these very same conservative organizations in Colorado. I had a running battle with them for 2 years. Many of the same tactics that you've seen rolled out here were visited upon me in Colorado. I didn't ask anyone to hire anybody on my behalf, but it doesn't surprise me that people who saw what had happened in Colorado figured that on a prophylactic basis it made sense to get somebody involved in this. That's what they did, and I have attempted to operate as independently from anybody as possible, but fully understanding the obligations that are impressed upon an appointee in a situation like this. So again, my apologies, Senator Murkowski. I would be very pleased to meet with your staff or yourself to iron out any misunderstandings we have. I did not intentionally mean to mislead you about this, if that's in fact what happened. I will, again, I'll just be repeating myself, but I want to get past this with you. I do not want this to become a problem.
Mr. Binz, my time has expired, and I do have other questions for you, but I'm sure that you can see the concern that I had when you sat in my office and assured me that there was no coordination with anyone outside of FERC, and then to read the series of emails, albeit there weren't more than a handful, but directly contradicting what I had been told. So I appreciate your explanation, but I think it does speak to the issue that I have raised, which is ensuring that the FERC is absolutely independent and that the leadership at the top remains so.
Senator, I would have it no other way.